Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and the day is the second day of April 2025. I have a couple of friends who have a birthday today, so happy birthday to them. And I think that we have a lot to talk about today as usual. We have first up and only up today is Liberty Essentials with Bill Mohr, the IT guy, and Karen the Riveter. And we're going to be talking about lots of things going on. I don't know if you guys saw this. However, in trending politics, there's a newly obtained internal FBI chat logs posts that are sending waves throughout Washington as they reveal the Bureau actively suppressed information. There's a surprise for you about the Hunter Biden laptop story on the very day the New York Post broke the bombshell report. There's screenshots of what they basically said and did to suppress the information instead of just coming clean with it and letting us know. I don't know about you guys, but I'm really getting sick of the lies, right? Well, I've always been sick of the lies, but I'm getting more sick of the lies. In the meantime, let's invite everybody on. Hey, Ralph. Hey, Bill. How you doing?
Good. Good Wednesday.
Morning.
Good Wednesday. And Karen, how you doing?
Good morning.
Getting our coffee and getting up and ready to go. So they literally admitted that there was no Russian disinformation in what the FBI was referring to here. And I hope everybody is really waking up to the fact that I was in Lansing yesterday. I filed a lawsuit. I'm very excited about it. I don't think I can talk about it quite yet, but it's kind of a big deal. It really is. And so as this thing rolls around, hopefully we're going to see some heads roll and some accountability taken for perhaps some bad actions by people within the state. In fact, encouraging people to break the law. And it's very, very disturbing to see what's going on. And when you look at those leaks that came out with the FBI, it just shows the institutional disconnect between we the people and the people sitting in the seats at every single level of government. It's disturbing, and I don't even know what else to say other than everybody needs to get in the game on this one, because it's going to take a whole bunch of us holding them accountable. I don't think one person can do it. I know they can't. President Trump can't get it done alone. And quite honestly, I just don't know what else to say about this to get people moving in the right direction and getting involved in this and caring about the direction that the country is going in a meaningful way, not sitting there complaining about what's going on in meetings and drinking coffee and such. Though I'm all about it. We're going to have to do something. And I think that this is hopefully we're going to see more of a wake-up call to everyone, though there are a lot of good people behind the scenes working. It's going to take all of us, because we need people to fill those positions. Which brings us back to the U.S. Taxpayers Party, the Constitution Party, which they refuse to let us change our name in the state of Michigan, but I think it's going to change. So anyhow, what say you guys?
Oh yeah, anytime that there is corruption, and people see the need for redress of grievances, if their elected officials are not going to address those issues, then they have every right to remove them. But when you remove them, as I've been saying for years, there has to be somebody that's willing to stand up and take their place. Right? You cannot just get rid of corruption, because those who are corrupt have the next people already in line. All the players are ready to go, and all they will do is just install another one. If there's no good people out there that are willing to stand up and actually take the initiative and make the sacrifices necessary to do what needs to be done, then we're just continuing to get more of the same.
Well said. So did you have a topic you wanted to talk about today? Anybody here that comes to mind?
So I was going to bring up something that Noah Webster had actually wrote back in 1790. In his discussion, he talked about the diseases of the body politic, right? And Webster was one of those who vouched for a strong federal government. So I disagree with him on some points. However, he had an essay that he wrote to the American people, and it addresses many issues that we see today that not only they were dealing with then, but that we continue to deal with. Right? So it's not just on one simple topic, but rather an address to the people to actually stand up and understand the problems that we see, and that it's within their duty to fix them. No one else is going to do it but them.
Yeah, and so that comes back to the standing up and going and doing things. I've been talking to people in our local area, and I think this is one of the most significant things that we can do is gather people in our local areas and hold the local people accountable. And because, as General Flynn always says, local action equals national impact. We're going to have to start gathering with the people around us and not continue to look at the top dog, the top office to fix things. It's got to be a systemic solution for the United States.
Yeah.
And even if you don't run for an office, even if you can go to like planning commission meetings and township board meetings and such, just so that they all know that they're being watched by the populace and will be held accountable for their actions, is an important thing, because a lot of times these board meetings and such are basically not attended by anybody from the community.
I was really shocked yesterday when I was in Lansing filing that lawsuit. There's literally nobody there in the offices, probably in the offices that I was in. So I was at the Justice Hall at the Court of Claims, and there were about 3 people that were in that office. Shocked beyond all belief. Then I went to the Board of Elections. There were 2 people at the Board of Elections. It's kind of like a ghost town, quite honestly. And when Jason Ikes went with me, and I'm going to tell you what, when we were walking around down there, I basically feel like everybody's kind of like just sitting down going, I'm not going to do anything because it seems so overwhelming. But I don't think anything's really being done. Like the people that are complaining about things, I have serious doubts that anybody is actually speaking to our elected, our public functionaries that are there, those that are elected and unelected. I don't think that people are talking to them. I think they're coming in. I saw one guy that walked up to the counter at one of the places. He had no idea where to go, and nobody in the office knew where to tell him to go. He couldn't define the problem clear enough to get an answer, and those in the office weren't super able to dig down and figure out what's going on. So at one point, the one person I talked to, I said, I had a question on one of the forms, and I said, what can you tell me about this area on the form? No, I can't give you any instruction whatsoever. I'm like, you can't even tell me about this one area on the form. Nope. And so I can see why people throw up their arms and go, I don't know what to do, because there's no transparency. They've changed all the campaign finance stuff around, and they've made it worse. Benson has put things behind kind of a firewall. They have literally made it impossible to get the documents that we should be able to have easy, free, and clear access to. And I understand why they've got it behind, to a certain degree, behind a firewall. It's to eliminate companies and attorneys or people that just want to, make a business out of it instead of being active for we the people. I get that, because it could really be exploited. But there's got to be a way to stop this kind of behavior and allow we the people to have better access to the information which we own and we've paid for. They're asking us to pay for the information when we FOIA, when we go in for any reason whatsoever, you got to pay a filing fee for a case. I think if they take away all ability or any necessity to file for a case, pro se, pro jury, pro per, whatever you want to call it, that we have to have a clear path to deal with this nonsense in the injustice system. There isn't one. So you've got to really get in there and dig. And I got to tell you, having filed before, it was a lot easier the second time. I went in there, I knew what to ask, I knew the forms, and I knew which direction to go in. And honestly, I think I need to do like a coaching series, because everybody else that's out there who is in trying to tell people what to do, they're all making money off of it. They're literally taking the process and subverting the process further by becoming experts who sell the information. I get it. Everybody has to make money somehow. I get it. But if the state's not going to do it, if the federal government's going to just obfuscate everything and convolute it, somebody better step up to help each other to get this done without a payback involved, which precludes people from getting involved once again. It's like every other organization and system out there. They're just trying to preserve their little silos of information.
Well, and to your point about it being empty, I really do think that we're in a situation a lot like the Bug's Life movie, that there's a lot more of the people than there are the people that are asserting that they have control, and if
they're
people
afraid.
actually, and if people actually stood up and took people to task and held people accountable for what they're supposed to be doing, there's a lot fewer of them out there than what you think. And I can't say I'm a huge fan of the movie Bug's Life because I don't like the dishonesty of the main characters for their own self-gain. However, there is definitely a lesson to be learned from that movie.
Yeah, it's a great communist point where you make them think that there's more of them that there really are, right? If the enemy can make you think that they are much larger and greater than you, they don't have to worry so much about you standing against them. But they also know that they will push on, and as long as they feel mush with their swords, they will continue to thrust through the American people until they find steel, in which case they will retreat. All communists know that. If you go back, you were just talking about Bug's Life. That's funny. But if you go back to what Charles Swindoll said, when he was talking about an important job, there was an important job that needed to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought that anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done.
Well done.
That's fun.
Did you have that memorized?
No, I don't. It's actually on one of my screens. I refer to it every once in a while as a reminder.
That's really fun. And I think honestly right now, I think everybody should take a trip to Lansing and see what's really going on there. Because did you see that Mike Johnson sent everybody home on Tuesday?
Yeah.
Again, this has become a joke. It's a joke.
It's the inflatable tanks being put up by the Ghost Army.
Yeah, it was April Fool's yesterday. And I think, Donna, what you were describing, it makes me think of the spy movies. It's like you walk in and you say, the rain in Spain stays mainly in the plane. And then they go, oh, okay, you know the password, see? And they open the secret door and then you're allowed in. But if they don't like you, if they don't trust you, they just keep their guy in the front as window dressing so that they think, well, it's just an office where they make suits. It's just a tailor's office. No, it's more than that. But you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. You're not given access. And they convince you, as Bill was talking about numbers, I think it's more about power and authority. Because they've convinced Americans that we don't have power and authority over them. And like I said before, on the Michigan Townships Association guidebook, they literally tell them they are your audience. That's the terminology. I got a photo of it to prove it. That's written in the book. They are your audience. They make them feel like that's their job. You only get a say when you got your 2 minutes during the meeting, or when you vote, or when you come in at one of their the little hours that they're available, which is fine, because I don't want them to come in every day and have to pay them for that. There's not enough for them to do to deserve that. But anyway, you could come in and talk to them and say things like, hey, did you do away with the election materials from last year? Because there's a lawsuit about that, you know. I was shocked when I called them once and they said, the clerk at the time said, oh no, we heard about that. We can't destroy that material. But people don't realize that they have the power and authority until they step up. And that happened in my case, where at the township level, for example, they were trying to pass a policy for the board. And the people said, wait a second, we don't know what you're talking about. We don't have a copy. It was never placed online. It was never offered at the back of the room or any other time. We want to read it. And they said, it doesn't apply to you. Yeah, it does. If you're going to pass it, it's ours. We need to see it. And they ended up voting on it with a tie because the people spoke up out of turn during the meeting. But they listened, and one man stood up for the people. And he said, you know what? They're right. They have a right to see it first. And they realized that while the people were angry and voicing an opinion out of turn according to their policy, they realized they better listen to them and we could have a polite conversation. And that's exactly how it went. Like Bill said, there were only a few there, but several of us spoke up out of turn and said, wait a minute, hold on. And you don't have to protest without peace in order to air your grievance. You can say, hey, I will work with you and I will shut that other guy up in the corner who's causing a problem. But let's do this together and let's do it the right way. If you've got people who are reasonable, you can do that. And if you don't, then you get them out. You get them out of office in a lawful, peaceful manner. And the problem that you were starting this discussion with, I think once the two-party system is demolished, then people who are qualified will come out of the woodwork. They're not willing to participate while they are able, because they know they're going to get squashed like that bug later on. Once they get into office, they know it's not going to work. They know they're not going to be able to do their job the way they want to do. So they're not stepping up right now. But I think once the way is cleared, they're going to see that they can do their job the way they should. Then I think more people will step up.
I think that is very intimidating to your point. And it feels probably a little bit hopeless because there are so many guys and gals out there that are just bad guys, right? And the discussion that we had, one of the discussions we had yesterday is in the question gets asked me all the time, who do you trust? You know what the answer to that is? No one in politics. You have very, very few friends in politics. Now, you know who your friends are, the friends that are sitting here. I don't consider you guys political people I know. We're actually friends, though we function in a political realm, right? But when you meet somebody in politics, you really, it takes time to figure out who you're talking to for real. And I would caution everybody to really, don't look at other people as your savior or even a safe place when you're in politics. You're on a job, you're working, it's kind of like a coworker. And over time you can figure out who you really can trust. But just walking into a room and having someone say everything, say all the right things, doesn't mean that you're aligned with them. The imposters look like us. They even talk like us, but they're not. And they use that as a weapon against us. And we really have to remember that. So you got to be grounded in God. And remember that when you're in politics, it's very transactional for most people. Most people won't do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. Most people in politics are looking for a ladder to climb. It's an industry. It's you have to look at it as a profession. They're professional politicians, and they go from one money-making scheme to the next, or they use it to make. And it sounds abysmal, but the reality is the truth is truth, whether we like it or not.
Well, and I think too, you need to keep in mind that even if you do trust someone, there's different degrees of trust, and you should always pretty much trust but verify. However, if there is someone that has had a pretty good track record of aligning with your values, you still need to kind of verify that on an ongoing basis, because especially when we're fighting an enemy that is not above doing threats or coercion to either that person, their family, or someone else around them, where it's entirely possible that for reasons which are morally justifiable for them, that they might fight against the cause that they actually support for one reason or another in a temporary manner. Yep. And so to a certain extent, you may have to go against someone that you would typically trust to advance a cause that they themselves would just as soon have you continue fighting.
Yep, that is the truth. And that is the body politic at its whole, right? When the people all unify around certain causes, they create their own body politic. And there are times when you have people that you don't like that you have to work with because we're running down the same road. We're headed in the same direction. When that direction changes, then I have to leave that off for a moment because I'm headed in this direction. Maybe we'll meet each other down the path a little ways, but you stand opposed to one another if you know in your conscience and you have your values grounded in truth that they're headed a different direction, right? Friends will stand opposed sometimes. The scripture even says faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Right? That's exactly what that's talking about. Friends will wound each other sometimes, but it is always in the manner of building each other up. It's never purpose to tear each other down. We're supposed to be edifying each other, exhorting each other, instructing each other, correcting each other. This is a lot of what's left off in the whole Western church civilization. We've left that off in lieu of this touchy-feely love that we can't judge or rebuke anything that goes on in any amount of actions that happen around us or that we see other people do. That's a far cry from what we should be doing. So, but I want to get to this because most of what we're talking about, Noah Webster addresses in this essay that he wrote, and this was shortly after his Yale education. I remember Noah Webster, his father loved him enough that he actually took out a mortgage on the family farm homestead so that he could send his son to Yale at the age of 16, which he graduated Yale at the age of 20. Now, Yale back then was not the Yale that we know today. They have long since left off their values and the moral structure of that university from what it was originally founded as. But this was written in 1790. He had titled it, "The Devil is Within You." And you'll understand why, because he addresses this very well. But he says that the body politic, like an animal, is liable to violent diseases, which from a time baffle the healing art, is a truth we acknowledge, which most of us lament. But as most of the disorders incident to the human frame are the consequence of an intemperate indulgence of its appetites, or of neglecting the most obvious means of safety, so most of the popular tumults which disturb government arise from an abuse of its blessings or an inattention to its principles. A man of robust constitution, relying on its strength, riots in gratifications which weaken the stamina of the day. The surfeiting pleasures of a few years destroy the power of enjoyment, and the full bed of he uses a lot of big words here, and I always fumble when I read his stuff. And the full bed of voluptuary feels a rapid transition to the meager valetudinarian. And I'm not sure what that word is. I'm sorry. You're going to have to look that one up. Thus, people who enjoy an uncommon share of political privileges often carry their freedom to licentiousness and put it out of their power to enjoy society by destroying its support. Too much health is a disease which often requires a very strict regimen. Too much liberty is the worst of tyranny. I'll read that again. Too much liberty is the worst of tyranny. And wealth may be accumulated to such a degree as to impoverish a state. If all men attempt to become masters, the most of them would necessarily become slaves in the attempt. And could every man on earth possess millions of gold coins, every man would be poorer than any man is now, and infinitely more wretched, because they could not procure the necessities of life. My countrymen, it is a common saying now that the devil is within you. I question the influence of the devil. However, in these affairs, divines and politicians agree in this to father all evil upon the devil. But the effects ascribed to this prince of evil spirits, both in the moral and political world, I ascribe to the wickedness and ignorance of the human heart. Taking the word devil in this sense, he is in you and among you in a variety of shapes. In the first place, the weakness of our federal government is the devil. It prevents the adoption of any measures that are requisite for us as a nation. It keeps us from paying our honest debts. It also throws out of our power all the profits of commerce, and this drains us of cash. Is not this the devil? Yes, my countrymen, an empty purse is the devil. You say you are jealous of your rights and dare not trust Congress. Well, that jealousy is an evil spirit. That sounds like a horrible phrase, doesn't it? Because we're at that point here. Remember, we're 1790, so understand where we're coming from here. He says, you act in this particular just like the crew of a ship who would not trust the helm with one of their number, because he might possibly run her ashore when by leaving her without a pilot, they were certain of a shipwreck. You act just like men who in raising a building would not have a master workman, because he might give out wrong orders. You will be masters yourselves, and as you are not all ready to lift at the same time, one labors at a stick of timber, then another, then a third. You are then vexed that it is not raised. Why let a master order 13 of you to hold together, and you will lift it at once? Every family has a master. When a ship or a house is to be built, there is a master. When highways are repairing, there is a master. Every little school has a master. The continent is a great school. The boys are numerous and full of roguish tricks, and there is no master. The boys in this great school play truant, and there is no person to chastise them. Do you think, my countrymen, that America is more easily governed than a school? You do very well in small matters. Extend your reason to great ones. Would you not laugh at a farmer who would fasten a cable to a plow, yet attempt to draw a house with a cobweb? Nathan said unto David, Thou art the man. You think a master necessary to govern a few harmless children in a school or family, yet leave thousands of great rogues to be governed by good advice. Believe me, my friends, for I am serious. You lose rights because you will not give your magistrates authority to protect them. Your liberty is despotism because it has no control. Your power is nothing because it is not united. But further, luxury rages among you, and luxury is of the devil. The war has sent this evil demon to impoverish people and embarrass the public. The articles of rum and tea alone, which are drunk in this country, would pay all of its taxes. But when we add sugar, coffee, feathers, and the whole list of baubles and trinkets, what an enormous expense. No wonder you want paper currency. Pay attention to this one. My countrymen are all grown very tasty. Feathers and Jordans must be imported. Certainly, gentlemen, the devil is among you. A Hampshire man who drinks 40 shillings worth of rum in a year and never thinks of the expense will raise a mob to reduce the governor's salary, which does not amount to 3 pence a man per annum. Is this not the devil? My countrymen, a writer appeared not long ago informing you how to redress grievances. He gives excellent advice. Let every man make a little box and put into it 4 pence a day. This in a year will amount to 6 pounds, 1 shilling, and 8 pence, a sum more than sufficient to pay any poor man's tax. Any man can pay 3 or 4 pence a day, though no poor man can at the end of the year pay 6 pounds. Take my advice, every man of you, and you will hardly feel your taxes. But further, a tender law is of the devil. When I trust a man a sum of money, I expect he will return the full value. That legislature which says my debtor may pay me with 1/3 of the value he received commits a deliberate act of villainy, an act for which an individual in any government would be honored with a whipping post, and in most government with the gallows. When a man makes dollars, 1/3 of which only is silver, and passes them for gold coin, he must lose his ears. But legislators can, with the solemn face of rulers and guardians of justice, boldly give currency to an adulterated coin, right? Paper currency, enjoy it upon debtors to cheat their creditors, and enforce their systematic knavery with legal penalties. The difference between the man who makes and passes counterfeit money and the man who tenders his creditor 1/3 of the value of the debt and demands a discharge is the same between a thief and a robber. The first cheats his neighbor in the dark and takes his property without his knowledge. The last boldly meets him at noonday, tells him he is a rascal, and demands his purse. My countrymen, the devil is among you. Make paper as much as you please, make it a tender in all future contracts, or let it rest on its own bottom. But remember that past contracts are a sacred thing, that legislatures have no right to interfere with them. They have no right to say a debt shall be paid at a discount or in any manner which the parties never intended. It is the business of justice to fulfill the intention of parties and contracts, not to defeat them. To pay bona fide contracts for cash in paper of little value or in old horses would be a dishonest attempt in an individual. But for legislatures to frame laws to support and encourage such detestable villainy is like a judge who should inscribe the arms of a rogue over the seat of justice, or clergymen who should convert into bawdy houses the temples of Jehovah. My countrymen, the world says the devil is in you. Mankind detests you as they would a net of robbers. But lastly, mobs and conventions are devils. Good men love law and legal measures. Knaves only fear law and try to destroy it. My countrymen, if a constitutional legislature cannot redress a grievance, a mob never can. Laws are the security of life and property, nay, what is more, of liberty. The man who encourages a mob to prevent the operation of law ceases to be free or safe. For the same principle which leads a man to put a bayonet to the breast of a judge will lead him to take property where he can find it. And when the judge dare not act, where is the loser's remedy? Alas, my friends, too much liberty is no liberty at all. Give me anything but mobs, for mobs are of the devil in his worst shape. I would shoot the leader of a mob sooner than I would a midnight ruffian. People may have grievances, perhaps, and no man would be more readily hold up his hand to redress them than myself. But mobs rebel against laws of their own, and rebellion is a crime which admits no palliation. My countrymen, I am a private, peaceable man. I have nothing to win or to lose by the game of paper currency, but I revere justice. I would sooner pick oakum all my life than stain my reputation or pay my creditor 1 farthing less than his honest demands. While you attempt to trade to advantage without a head to combine all the states into systematic uniform measures, the world will laugh at you for fools. While merchants take and give credit, the world will call them idiots and laugh at their ruin. While farmers get credit, borrow money and mortgage their farms, the world will call them fools and laugh at their embarrassments. While all men live beyond their income and are harassed with duns and sheriffs, no man will pity them or give them relief. But when mobs and conventions oppose the courts of justice and legislatures make paper or old horses a legal tender in all cases, the world will exclaim with one voice, "Ye are rogues, and the devil is in you." How much of that did we find that's happening now?
A lot.
This is 1790 when that was written. And here we are. We've adopted the very same measures that Noah Webster warned about back then. It is really an incredible sight to see.
It is an incredible sight to see. And I think this is where we go in and we really need to introspectively really look at what, who we are, what we stand for, and know the people around you. I think this is kind of fun. I'm going to put something up on screen right now. Which I think this is really interesting. New study finds that friends who often playfully insult each other are 300% more honest and loyal. The rest of them, you gotta check out a little bit. The people that seem to run to the top of politics and stay in it like they are to have an office or a payback, every single one of them needs to be removed.
Well, and that's the problem, is the people somehow believe, we talked about this Monday night a little bit, but the people somehow believe that these elected servants of ours, right? Noah calls them masters, but you got to understand the terminology back then. These elected servants of ours are entrusted with specific duties and specific authorities. And when they act outside of that and create laws out of thin air that we have never given them the authority to handle, like paper currency, for instance, then it's pretended legislation according to our forefathers in the Declaration of Independence. It's no less than the king and Parliament was doing to them. They would create laws out of thin air where they have no authority to do so. And that's not so much the problem, because government will always do what you let them get away with. There will never be a point in history when an established government, no matter how good it may seem, will not eventually try to pass laws outside of their authority, right? You look through history, all of them have done it in one form or another, trying to usurp power that was never granted to them. The problem lies is when the people believe that those laws are legitimate. That's where the bigger issue lies.
And also that they can't do anything about it, which comes back to, honestly, a lack of faith in God. If your heart is that you have to have a person to believe in, or your security comes from thinking there's going to be somebody who's always going to do the right thing, you're deflected away from having your faith in God rather than, away from God and putting it in these temporal things that are fallible.
Well, and to your point too of how of the effectively defaulting on debts that you owe and the weaknesses of paper currency. There was a real good article that I was sent a few weeks ago that, about the different ways that the government over the years has effectively stolen the assets backing our paper money even before it went into the Federal Reserve System.
Well, they've stolen our infrastructure too. When people realize what they did with the Inflation Reduction Act and what actually happened there, especially like including in the state of Michigan, how they are stealing this through public-private partnerships, which is nationalizing business and such. Money from that Inflation Reduction Act went into building warehouses. Well, guess where they gave some of that to? To Amazon. So we literally threw our money straight at things that are Chinese backed, Chinese corporations. They used it to enrich themselves through the public-private partnerships. They're stealing our elections. They're stealing our infrastructure. They're stealing our land. The DNR has 4.6 million acres. They stole our gold. And I think this to this point right here, this is pretty interesting.
The part further down in that article too about the 1934 default was of particular interest.
Well, this is pretty interesting because, quite honestly, this has been going on for a long time. We got 100 years or better. We actually have a lot longer than that they have been working together, colluding. And honestly, I'm just going to say it. I think it's a satanic death cult. I really do. That they're Satanists, Luciferians, whatever you want to call them, but they're working together to subvert anyone who follows God and doesn't jump into their system. Their system is totally corrupt, expects complete obedience, and that you're manipulatable, that you are, that's what it's all about. So these coins cease to have immediate market value among the banks. Private banks and central banks held gold in the form of coins for dollar holders who, prior to confiscation, would occasionally present U.S. dollars for redemption in gold. This, in part, the gold in Fort Knox that wood classifies as gold held for government operations, held under the gold standard. 1933, however, banks did not need to hold on to any gold coins for this purpose, since Roosevelt's effort to end the gold standard, including a prohibition on banks paying out in gold.
Yeah, I mean, look, just look at the statement there. When it talked about Roosevelt, obviously we're talking about President Roosevelt's effort to end the gold standard. Now tell me, where did that authority come from? And why once we ended that, did the people accept it? Right? All of you constitutionalists out there, let me ask you this question, right? Because that's what we hold to, because that's what our elected servants swore the oath to, right? That's what our government is founded on. That is the supreme law that is supposed to govern them. Does it not say that no state shall accept for debts anything but gold and silver? Right? When's the last time I know a few people. But for the most part, when is the last time that anybody has paid their any amount of debts to the state in gold or silver? Right? When they demand any sort of filing fees from you, try to pay that in gold and silver and see what happens.
Well, John Tater paid in beans one time, which I think is very funny because it's there's a lack of clarification. That is actually a pretty good arguable point that they're asking you to pay in dollars. There's no such thing. Yeah. And he paid in beans and they dismissed it.
Well, yeah, that's a funny point because I know quite a few people like that. I mean, to have a valid debt, you have to know not only the amount but the currency that the debt is owed in, right?
And they refuse to specify.
Yeah, when you look at the War of the States, what they call a civil war. When you look at the War of the States and you see the debts that were incurred in the Confederate States, right? The Confederate States had set up their own currency. The Confederate States had their own legal tender, their own payment for debts. So when debts were incurred there, it was done in Confederate money, right? Well, what happened when the Confederate States so-called dissolved? Right? What happened to those debts? Well, you can't pay that debt in U.S. dollars, right? Even the United States notes that we had, or the greenbacks, I guess would be at the time. You can't pay that in greenbacks because the value wasn't the same as what the debt was incurred by, right? So when the currency ends, there's no way to pay the debt except the person that contracted the debt is willing in both parties to adjust the currency to something other than that. But it can only be done by the contractors of the debt. Nobody else. Nobody can. That's what Noah Webster was talking about. Nobody can legislate a different payment for a debt outside of the contract that it was originally made by.
Ralph, would you like to speak to this, that the 1934 issue in this article?
Well, basically with this, what they did is for paying out the bonds that were taken out, and a bunch of those bonds were taken out, and bought by American citizens. And what they did is, to discharge that, they disallowed American citizens from being able to redeem those bonds properly in their hard metal value, but they continued redeeming the bonds that were taken out by foreign entities under that old system. So they actually prioritized paying back foreign entities in tangibles over paying back the American citizens' intangibles, and then basically just paid back the American citizenry in effectively fiat currency. And
it's shocking.
Yeah. I mean, to a certain extent, I would argue that to a certain extent, really, we didn't need another fiat currency because we already had one, because gold and silver are, in a way, kind of fiat currency. They really hold very little value in and of themselves for doing anything. I mean, as a material, you can do gold plating on things for electrical conductivity, but think about that. The main reason why we value gold and silver is because we value gold and silver.
It's a belief system. It's like everything else. What really needs to happen is, in my opinion, we need to do much more bartering of our choice. And it's like, it would be great if the government has the right to coin money, right? However, I'm kind of like, I would like to see some diversity so that people can determine their own futures. And it's got to be things you hold in your hand. I think the barter system is a great way to go. And all the taxes they did, if they tariff the correct way and they use our asset to make money, I don't think any of the taxation is really that it is valid. You can tax the gain on businesses, but all other taxation is basically taxing us on an asset we own, which we own this country. Why are we paying taxes to this country when we own it? They are mismanaging our asset entirely. If they were doing it right, it would be a moneymaker for the people and we would be free. Everything they've done is wrong. And I want you guys to think about this. Do you know how much money we have in circulation right now that the United States holds?
I don't.
$3 trillion that we have in circulation. Now, I want you to think about this. What would be the quickest way for a foreign entity or bad guys within our nation to topple the nation? To start making mass withdrawals through the illegal invasion. People that are here, there's cells all over the United States. I've been getting a little bit information into the window of what's really happening out there. There are cells of people that are trained all over the United States of America. What if we're not even just talking to run on the bank here for the American people? What if the gold is gone? Let's just say the gold is gone. I'm not sure that that's the case. I think that we've got good guys that have been clawing it back. But in the worst case scenario, let's go from one end of the spectrum of possibility to the other. If a foreign nation decides to have a debt paid up, we're done. So what do they put up for collateral on that? Look what they did to our homes. They collateralized every one of our homes. Just this came out a couple weeks ago, 20-1. They leveraged us. That means they claimed ownership of our homes because they collateralized our homes. It's not just the property here. It's literally they're claiming that they are in charge of everything. The businesses through public-private partnerships. Now, with that amount of money that's in circulation, $3 trillion, and our national debt is how high right now? I haven't even looked at it for a while because it's depressing, right? And I'm going to say President Trump's done a really good job. They've done a real good job cutting some of this out. But the core issue right now is that it's going to take some time to go down layers of this and to write it. And I think we're going in the right direction. I personally think that they've probably clawed back some of this gold that was shipped overseas that we have had. And I think they've got some of the bad guys by the throats right now, and they're shaking them out. They're, to try to get better behavior. And I think some of that's going on. However, we have to understand the underlying structure that's wrong. Right now, the systemic corruption we have going on, and I'm just going to say the state of Michigan, but it's everywhere. It goes into industry. It goes into the ports. It's in the schools. It's in every single way that they have figured out how to money launder away from us, stealing what we own. One piece at a time, they have sold this nation off.
Well, and remember that the government has no right to directly tax an individual because a servant cannot charge the master for a service.
They have no right to own property.
Well, and I would also go somewhat in a specific related tangent on that too, in that the federal government has zero authority to tax anything inside of a state, and that all of the federal funding is supposed to flow upward from the state governments, not from the people themselves.
It's apportionment. It's like you pay your portion of the taxes through the state, not directly anything to the federal government. That should be the smallest part of government that we see, that besides the family, the federal government should be the smallest. That should be fairly irrelevant at this point in time.
Yep. And even though it's the smallest government, I believe Noah Webster was right at the time where it should be the strongest. Now, not strength through like military force or strength through any amount of force against the people or the states, but rather it should be the strongest in that the state should be unified in supporting it because it was designed in the protection of the people's life, liberty, and property. That's it, right? You just talked about them putting up homes for collateral, right? We see that at the state level through property tax, right? Unlawful property tax, whether or not it's in your constitution, because it's in every 50 state,
right?
Every single one of them. You wonder why they're unified in that manner, because the federal government has kind of passed that idea down, and everybody sees it as a money-making pit. One thing to keep a note, look at your property tax statement. You'll notice that there's no units of measurement that are listed on your property tax, only a number. Okay? So understand that that's not a debt that you incurred. They are merely requesting that from you. However, if you don't pay your servants for their mandated service fees, they will come try to take your house, right? So be ready for that fight. Just saying that. But not only our property in that manner, but understand that every single, not every person, the majority of people in these United States have what they call what? Social Security numbers. What is that? It is a tag stamp, basically the same thing you put on cattle's ears, that they can be identified by a number so that they can put each living individual as well up for collateral and borrow against your net worth and income over your lifetime, even though you haven't made any yet.
Absolutely, they're doing that. There's some real big problems that we're going to have to go through. They actually trade us, like they trade us on the market and our value.
Yeah, it's a huge pit, and once you open it up, you're really not going to want to see what's there unless you're one of these curious people.
Or you're one of these warrior people that it just makes you mad, and to the point of wanting to fight back because you know, we have to fight back. We can't let this go on, or there's going to be nothing left for our kids and for the future generations. If we refuse to stand up and do something, it's going to be on us and it'll be our fault. Did we get handed it to us? Yes, we did. We didn't start this problem. It's not our fault. But it is our fault if we walk away from it and we do nothing. If we do nothing, we're guilty for the blood of the children that has been basically sacrificed in this nation. When you look at abortion, abortion is a sacrifice.
And a quick thing of
and the kidnapping, the human trafficking, it is a sacrifice. We are literally in the midst of a very evil. I can't even put words to it, into pure evil that's going on in this world.
So a quick thing of note too on the Social Security number thing, because the it being used as an identifier to brand us as cattle was a concern that's been around for decades. Well, at least in the IT side of things, the guidance on using Social Security numbers was always do not use them as an identifier. We cannot guarantee that they're unique. They will get reused. You know, when people die, we will be reusing Social Security numbers. So this does not map to a specific person. And so don't use it as such. Don't use it as a primary key in a database. You know, don't use it as somebody's username, whatever. Don't use it to identify a person. That's been the guidance for decades. Well, recently, and this is like, I'm going to say it wasn't a specific time, but there's about, I'm going to say 10 years ago or so, the guidance started to change. And now they are actually recommending that you use that as an identifier. They've changed that around. And so now the official recommendation is, yes, you can use this as an identifier, just like everybody's been warning about for decades.
And how's that working with all of these dead people on the Social Security rolls right now?
It's working exactly as intended.
It is. It's money laundering, and that's exactly what they're doing here. I want to come back to this property tax issue right now because of that Axe My Tax nonsense, and explain a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes with Axe My Tax and Carla Wagner, who came to our meeting and literally, I'm going to tell you right now, gave us a song and dance about never being in politics, never doing anything, then finding out she was Ryan Kelly's campaign manager, and had 3 pages as we're sitting there listening to her Pollyanna story, that she had 3 pages of donations to different campaigns and PACs and that sort of thing. So that to me is a flat out misrepresentation of the truth. And I don't like being lied to. So when you go in and you start looking at this and see that it wasn't properly filed and they were collecting signatures after the due date, we got a real problem there. And so this is rearing its head again, and it is politics for dummies. Okay, I'm just going to flat out say it. If you follow Axe My Tax, you have just put yourself into politics for dummies category. If you really want to know what's going on there, it goes to the mortgage fraud that's been going on. And oh, by the way, look into Anthony Hudson and Carla Wagner's ties to developers, to real estate, and to the mortgage type industry that's out there. I would suggest you look into these people that are pushing this stuff, because I think you're going to find some surprising facts. Okay. When They got all the right headlines. They push the right headlines. They say the right words for people who refuse to look into them. But what's really happening is there has been a huge shift. And what keyed me into this was the putting our houses up for collateral at the 21-to-1 ratio. They admitted ownership right there of our property, whether you have your stuff paid off or not. Okay. They were putting your tax value, everything in that regard up for collateral. And so here you go. Ask my tax. Oh, we got to get property taxes. Well, who owns your property? The banks own your property, and the mortgage company and the IMF and everybody else who has claimed ownership of our assets, including what the DNR has grabbed in the state. They've already claimed ownership of it. So now what's happening? The big bankers are trying to get out of paying property tax. And they're going to shift it back as I stand, live and breathe in front of you and stand in front of you and God Almighty. They're going to shift it back on we the people. Because they don't want to pay property tax on what they've just claimed to own.
So I've got a great idea for a way to solve that in a different way that it would surely work a lot better, and that would be to call a constitutional convention and add eliminating property tax as an amendment.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea, Ralph. And then the only thing, which is the Constitution, that stands between us and complete and utter destruction of this country.
To be clear, we do not have the moral stance right now to properly call a constitutional convention and affect anything good.
No, the people. Everybody says all the politicians are evil and they're liars, cheats, and thieves, which I believe. But you know what? It's a representation of the people. If any of us have done anything out there that didn't have absolutely perfect morality, integrity behind it, it has to be questioned. And if we've done something wrong, we have to repent before God and right those wrongs that we've done. We have to do this. And there's no one out there that's perfect. There's no one that's going to have, every one of us by the law that's written there, their pretended legislation, is guilty of 3 felonies a day. And it's because of their pretended legislation. They put that in place to harass us and be able to take good people down instead of giving them a chance to write it, which is why we have to talk to our politicians, because we've got to give them a chance to write it. There's a lot of people that have been blackmailed. Denise is saying here too, they need to work on the real world. They have too much time. It's a mob to make up all these de facto laws. It is a mob, to your point, Bill, which you're reading earlier. It's a mob. It's mob rule right now. They need, let's see, bingo, Donna.
Because everybody believes this is a democracy, which is nothing more than mob rule.
It is. Denise
they let them get away with it.
Well, and I'd argue, too, that we have gotten too close to actually being a democracy in that, like, for example, the president is not supposed to be directly elected by the people.
Denise says, in my opinion, Social Security, Disability, Medicare, Medicaid, and all payouts alike should be stopped. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul. Why aren't communities and states taking care of their people? They're not at all. We're just something to grab money off of. The Truman Show is set up to keep us enslaved in this demonic realm. Yes, Ralph, I just went for an ultrasound. They asked on a tablet if I wanted to provide my Social Security. I clicked no. All of a sudden, my Social Security popped up anyway. What the hell? Nice. It is being used as an identifier.
Yep. And that was guidance for decades. It was very well known in the IT side, because that was the guidance: is you do not use a Social Security number as an identifier. You come up with a unique identifier for that person. If you need a record in a database, use a random number, use a sequential number, doesn't matter, but don't use a Social Security number. And it's only been the last few years that they've started changing their tune on that. right around the same time, they started doing all this nonsense with the voter roll verification, with the last 4 digits of the social security number being enough to be an identifier for a person for that. They're trying to make it that it was never intended, according to official guidance, to be a unique identifier for that person. And in some cases, there were laws against using it as an identifier, or regulations against using it as an identifier in certain situations that they knew were prone to using it as an identifier if they didn't explicitly state that you couldn't. And all of that has started going out the window and going to exactly what people were warning about for years.
I'm going to bring this up now because I am the chairman of the U.S. Taxpayers Party of Michigan, and we are working on, not only are we working on resolutions, but bringing good candidates forward. And I would like to encourage anyone to contact myself and or anyone else that you know in the party, because we are getting together and we are working to craft resolutions based on the law, sending it as kind of notices to our public functionaries and instructing them on what they need to do. This is going to continue to result in lawsuits against them if they refuse to follow. We're the party of doers. We're not the party of sit around and thinkers and fighting within the party. In fact, nobody runs for an office in the Taxpayers Party, which is the Constitution Party, which the Secretary of State has literally refused to allow us to change our name, and has done some other things which will come out, and I will not elaborate on it exactly right now. But they have refused. They have broken the law. They have gone against the Constitution to allow us to use legally the title that the party should have to match the national affiliate the national party. And I've got a real bone to pick with these people, because they're acting like kings and rulers. They are not doing the will of the people, and they are working overtime to obstruct it. We're going to have to get together. And so I would encourage everyone to go to the site, ustpm.org, and to jump in the fight with us. We're not asking you to have absolute compliance to everything we believe in, because that's not constitutional. We're putting up candidates that pass muster on knowing and standing with the Constitution, because we are the Constitution Party and a lawful governance of the United States, and work with us. I don't want somebody showing up to show up and say, I'm here. Oh, yay. I'm glad you're here. Fantastic. And then tell us what you want done. That's crap. Okay. I'm done with it. I am done with people going up to people that are in office and saying, you work for me. Okay. You fail as a manager. You're going to go in there and sit there and sob and whine like a baby that wants to have everything done. That's your responsibility to do it. It's our responsibility to self-govern. It's our responsibility to tell them what we would like to have done and to work with them to see that things are done. And if they step outside of that, to oppose them in a meaningful way instead of just ranting on social media. You've got to start writing letters. You got to go meet with these people. They have to know that you're out there. When you go to Lansing or DC or any of these other places that are kind of like ghost towns, they're kind of like a ghost town. You don't see normal people in the game, everyday people like us, doing something to tell them what needs to be done and then having a plan to hold them accountable. There has to be an accountability plan that backs it up with teeth, with bite, and with consequences.
Yeah.
So there you go.
You know, a quote from it was actually the slogan of the Federalist Party given by John Jay. It says, those who own the country ought to govern it. Right? We use the phrase by the people and for the people, right? But do we actually understand what that means? It means you can't just sit around. You can't just watch the things happen. And what is Bill Moore's definition of whining? Right? It's complaining without proposing a solution. Don't come to me and sit there and talk about the problems we face, right? Because I got most of them, right? There's always new ones that show up, but I got most of them. I hear them all the time. Don't come to me with the problems unless you actually have a solution or you want to sit down and have that discussion to figure one out. If those two things don't exist, one or both of those don't exist, leave. I don't want to hear it anymore, right? We have too many whiners and not enough people who are willing to sacrifice a little bit of time to help out.
And you know what? They're expecting us to drag the dead horses behind us and then create events so that they can come and have a big party all the time. And then have a fundraiser, to have another fundraiser, to have another fundraiser. Oh, yeah. What are you fundraising for? The next party to come? You know, the next good time, the next convention where we just sit there and it's a show that nothing gets done. I mean, that's what I'm seeing. You need to step up and run for an office. And, you know, I'm just going to say it. U.S. Taxpayer Party of Michigan is going to be looking for and helping people get on the ballot, enabling them to get on the ballot every day. Good people on the ballot, not professional politicians that are just here to continue to be the problem that is literally killing this nation. These parties, the political parties, okay, I'm against all of them. I'm even against the Constitution Party and the Taxpayers Party. I really am. We need a new system, but we're going to use what we have, the tools available to us to take it back. But the end game is that we've got to get rid of these political parties because ours isn't, because we don't take any money in of any consequence. It is not the PAC money or the dark money is not going to flow through this party. It's not going to happen. Okay. And the ones that do take the money, the Democrats and the Republicrats, both of them, it's the uniparty. And it's both a foreign as well as a domestic enemy of the United States of America. They're controlled.
Yep, it is way beyond time for a new system. We did a show a while back talking about George Washington and John Adams when they were basically prophesying to the American people about the great evil of a two-party system, right? That is one thing I believe they failed in when drafting a constitution, is that was even an allowable thing to get involved in elections, right? If you want to have your parties, you want to have your associations, your organizations, your whatever, your fraternities, I don't know how many other words in the English language we can use for that. But if you want to have your little groups and cliques of people that are all focused on certain things, right? Like
it's always about money.
Like the early day Republicans, right? They were after specific agendas. They weren't even after the Constitution when the Republican Party started, but they were after specific agendas that they wanted to change in the American public. So you want to have those cliques? Fine. But we need to get them out of the registration and the election process completely. We need to return this back to individuals. And let me tell you, a simple way that can be done is if the people quit playing the games and quit having their mindset in this divisive red, blue, left, right, Republican, Democrat election system. If you would focus on electing individuals, right, and where there's not one, run for it, you could abolish this whole system, right? But I don't see the American people doing that. So in the meantime, you have people that are trying to adopt and change the current legislation in the election system, right? You want a good bathroom read? Just download the election statutes from the state of Michigan. It'll take you a few days to read through them all. But in the meantime, people like us are trying to get that sort of thing changed to abolish it from the inside. It's a lot harder doing it that way, let me tell you. Right? It would be much easier if the people unite and say, we're not going to play this game anymore and be done with it. But we'll take the hard path if the people don't want to take the easy path. because something has to be done, and there has to be people willing to stand up and to say no more. We're not doing it. Right?
When you see the terror cells in the United States that are going to pop up because they're already here, we have had no borders for how long? And yes, they're deporting some, but they're not even remotely close to where we're at right now or where we need to be. And so if things tip over an edge right now, I hope you have good faith in God, because you're going to need it. We're all going to need it. Right now, we still have a chance. And that means that everyone has to get involved and realize that we are in an undeclared war on American soil, though we in fact have seen bullets fly. It's just not being talked about. And I know of people that have lost their lives within the United States of America that it isn't hitting the news, because they don't want everybody to know what's actually going on. There are people that have already died for this cause. I hope someday the bravery that they stood for, that their names are proudly displayed as being fighters for this nation who were eliminated. And, we saw some of it with the ark inciting that happened around the Clintons, and dead doctors don't talk, basically stuff but it's not just them. There are good people that they will literally eliminate. Look at Andrew Breitbart. Look at they're operational right now. It's okay, because some of us just don't care. We're going to walk forward no matter what the threat is and say, God's standing right by us. And I know that he is blessing us in this time. Our faith has to be in God, because you'll walk right through the middle of all of this evil. It won't even touch you. The only way you can do that, though, is to be a believer in Christ. Otherwise, you won't have the protection to do that. And I firmly believe that. But we're going to have to step forward and walk and recognize the threat and walk through it and forward anyway.
Yeah, there's a good quote by George Bancroft from about 1830s, where he said that the public happiness is the true object of legislation and can be secured only by the masses of mankind themselves awakening to the knowledge and the care of their own interests. Right? If you don't care about what's going on around you and you don't think it's affecting you, you need to open your eyes a little bit, because nothing's going to change until you realize that this is not only going to affect you, but it's going to affect your posterity, their posterity, right? No less than Thomas Paine says, let evil come in my day that my children may live in peace, not the other way around. I don't care for a peaceful life here, right? We're not called in the scriptures to be peacekeepers, right? You won't find it. We are called to be peacemakers. And you go back to the Latin that was common at the founding of this nation, and you will find that sometimes to have peace, you must prepare for war. Because through war comes peace, right?
We're in a war. We're definitely in a war. And they're keeping us distracted by all of these surface level political stuff instead of going for the crux of the problem, which is the structure. If you debase the structure underneath their activities, and I mean that by if you want to get rid of the issue of, let's say, the mutilation clinics, the trans clinics, right? Which is just a big moneymaker. Look at how they exploded and how Pritzker has made how much money on this. They're behind a lot of those clinics. You know what? If the money isn't there to fund these initiatives, which they shouldn't be funded anyway, why is the United States funding trans clinics? Why is it funding abortion? I'm completely against funding of abortion or any of this stuff, because you're forcing people who believe that this is murder to pay into a system to enable murder.
forcing
how
using
would everybody
violence.
feel if that's right? How would everybody feel if all of a sudden the federal government started funding the genocide of all the dolphins? There'd be an uprising. But you know what? Genocide babies and nobody says a thing.
And it's required under the threat of violence, which our government tries to reserve the exclusive right to use against its own populace.
Yep. There are so many battles that need to be fought. I'm going to have to get going here soon, but there are so many battles that need to be fought. But there are so many more people that are capable of fighting them. Just like we read from that poem earlier from Charles Swindoll, right? Where everybody blames somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done, right? Everybody can stand up and do something. You don't have to fight the big battles, for Pete's sake. You know, I when I first got involved, I was looking at some of these things going, there is no way I'm even going to, no way I can speak out in public. No way, right? Then somebody asked me to one time. And that was about the end of that, right? But when Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes 11:4, was one of my favorite verses. But he had said that he that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. Right? There are plenty of seeds that need to be sown, even educating the next generation. Right? And there are plenty of blessings we can reap as Americans if we are willing to put forth the work in sowing that which is proper and getting rid of the tares that hinder it. Right? But what rain is standing in your way? And what clouds prevent you from seeing the harvest that we're supposed to be reaping? Each individual has to answer that one. I can't answer it for you.
Bill, would you like to say the prayer today? And then we're going to go on to our days today. And I'm going to be on recon here for the rest of the weekend through Monday. So I won't be on BNN tomorrow, Friday, or Monday. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting week this week and next week. I think the next 2 weeks. Take time to get yourself centered on God, because I think we're going to see eventually some things that are out in the public that are going to shock us a little bit. Maybe we're not quite prepared for it all. That's okay, because the only one that we should trust is we trust our families. We trust our close friends and such. But the information that comes through to us, we need to approach it with a little bit of caution, because the bad guys are working overtime at defeating the truth. We're going to have to dig through it, right? So if we keep ourselves grounded in God, we can see these storms or the storm move through, and it doesn't affect us. We're not blown around. We can put it in perspective, even if things are scary or they don't feel good to see some of these things. It doesn't feel good to human beings to watch the things that are familiar to us go away. It literally puts us in a state of grief and loss and mourning, because we like the familiar. But if the familiar is evil, we have got to be ready to change and move into something, or move back into what worked, or move into something that needs to happen. I mean, people will hold on to sicknesses just because they're used to complaining, right? Instead of doing something to get out of sickness quite often, or a bad situation. They'll stay in a bad situation because it's familiar instead of going into something that's better. And we need to remember that sometimes we're our own worst enemies in that regard. We need to be able to change and follow God, even on a path that is unfamiliar to us. Get ready. Get yourself ready mentally. And it's going to be okay, because God is in control. No matter what we see, He is still in control of what's going on. And that's why we put our faith in Him. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. That's all. The Bible lays it out for us. And so once we start following those things that He's given us as the instruction manual for life, things become a lot easier, calmer, peaceful, and okay. And you'll get the strength to walk into these battles without wavering, because it'll be God himself that holds you up. So anyhow, Bill, can you say a prayer for us today?
Sure.
Okay.
Father, again, we thank you. Thank you for this day, the ability to meet together and fellowship and discuss the great evils we see in our day, Father, and not only discuss them, but be able to talk about the solutions and what's being done and what has been done and what needs to be done. But Father, we acknowledge before all that you are still King. You sit on the throne. Father, you are the supreme judge of the universe, as so many of our forefathers had established in our Constitution. Father, they understood it then, and we have since lost it, and we are slowly becoming destroyed for our lack of knowledge and educating our generations to come, Father. I ask you to equip each one of us, Father, and equip each one hearing on the show this morning, that you would endow us with the gifts that we need, Father, the abilities that you require of us to perform our duties. We require nothing more than that, and we ask that anything that stands in the way, Father, that you put aside, that you destroy. Get it out of our way, Father, that we may be able to complete the tasks at hand and be able to keep the possession that you have so graciously given us here in this land. Father, equip each one of us, give us courage and strength as we proceed, and let us not falter amidst the flames. In Jesus' name, amen.
In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks, Bill. I appreciate that so much. Do you guys have last words here?
I gave my last words a minute ago. I jumped the gun.
That's good.
Well, I guess to the point of trustworthiness of anything, you've got the just looking back in the decades, the U.S. made inflatable tanks, inflatable artillery to fool the full enemy intelligence. And on the other side, there's the story of the fake German airfield that they built out of wood, and that the British then dropped a single wooden bomb on after they let them waste all the resources building that, whether that story is true or not. There's deception going on all over the place, and just be mindful of it.
Karen.
Well, it's a raining and a storming here at my house right now. We experienced some storms the other day, so we've got figurative and literal. Everybody stay safe, be smart. I posted about a couple that one was holding a cell phone, the other was plugging it in, and their house got struck by lightning. They both got struck, and they were okay. But it makes me think about, we're in the storm season again. We're in thunderstorm season. Keep your things charged up, but don't keep them charging when there's lightning around. And, you just have to think about preparing for the battles and the storms as they come, but then you don't have to worry about it anymore. Like I'm watching everything that's happening every day. I see a lot of good stuff happening. Like we were kind of laughing earlier. Oh no, they're shutting down Congress on April Fool's Day. Sometimes you just have to laugh and always look at it from a narrative perspective. I'm really enjoying that with Badlands Media, Chris Paul, Burning Bright are a couple of the people that I'm enjoying following. I don't always agree with everything, but if you look at what is the story they're trying to tell you and why, then you stay above it and you don't get caught up emotionally in the swings of the news stories. Even the quote-unquote good guys. Scott Pressler was one that, boy, he's been outed in the last week. Not the real good guy, all about election stuff that you thought he was, or that some people thought he was. So anyway, yeah, there's deceit everywhere, but don't be too discouraged by that, because if you trust in God and your own perceptions and critical thinking, and you stay above the emotional reactions, you're going to be okay. You're going to be a lot better off about it.
And regarding Scott there too, another related point is don't also immediately believe all accusations that are levied against someone, because that is, there's just as much deception from both sides right now. And look into it carefully. Be very careful with what you believe on any of it.
Well, I think we're going to go back to that just a minute, but when you put your trust in human beings, it's a form of idolatry when you look at somebody to solve all your problems, or you have a hero you follow. You should listen to it for information. You can love and appreciate all people, but that doesn't mean you put them on a pedestal and eat everything they say information-wise that comes your way. Because to your point, Ralph, they may have been fed bad information. Another point would be did somebody get in there and sabotage the information that they're putting forward, right? Has somebody created a false background? Do you know how many people in the state of Michigan have aliases that are in politics? A lot. And there's a lot of them who aren't who they say they are. There's a lot of them who have connections to China, direct connections to China. That
there are a lot of them with spouses that are not who they say they are.
Exactly. So, you can listen for information, but really listen for the structure, and you'll figure it out as you exercise the discernment and asking questions. That's a great place to be, is not disbelieving people, but not believing them either. It's a putting yourself in the position of being an observer, trusting yourself in what you see, and digging into it. If you have a question, if things don't feel right, dig into it. Maybe that person doesn't know and needs your help to overcome something that it wasn't true, okay, that they've been purveying or something like that. We just don't know, but the structure is what we look at, and then the connections. So you guys have a really great day, and we will see you next week. I'll be probably posting from my little recon mission some, and there's a lot of really good people behind the scenes that are working. That does not absolve anyone from from being involved. That's more of a call to join with the right people to fight for doing something. And that doesn't mean just getting into any organization. You want to get into a good one that actually stands for something, not talking points. So anyhow, God bless you all. God bless everyone you love. And God bless America. Make it a great day. And take some time to just know that God's in control. You don't have anything to be afraid of. The minute you have the emotions or you're fearful, you've lost. They've already got you right there. So just walk forward in this day in the power and strength of Jesus Christ, and know that he'll never leave you nor forsake you. And we will see you next week.